Hello, Ikab Dota here, bringing you another Dota 2 video. Today I'll be talking about Behaviour score, the second most important stat line attached to your account. In this video, I'll explain what Behaviour score is, how you gain and lose it, why it matters, and finally, methods to improve your Behaviour score. Let's begin. So, what is Behaviour score? Behaviour score is a whole number between 1 and 10,000 associated with your account that describes how desirable of a teammate you are to get matched with in matchmaking. You lose Behaviour score by ruining games or flaming players and getting reported, and you gain Behaviour score by playing games where you go unreported or from commands. There are real, tangible incentives to maintain a high Behaviour score. So, what are the incentives? Behaviour score affects your Dota experience in three main ways. It affects your queue time, it affects the quality of your games, and it affects your ability to get better. So, how does it specifically affect each of these things? Let's begin with queue time. Having a low Behaviour score can increase your queue time dramatically. The main reason for this is that the low Behaviour score player pool is split into three groups between players who can actively search ranked, players who are in low priority, and players who are on a matchmaking cooldown. This is not a problem for the high Behaviour score pool of players who are all usually eligible to search ranked. There are also far more high Behaviour score players, i.e. players with at least 7,000 Behaviour score, than low Behaviour score players. When I was hovering at about 8,000 Behaviour score on my main account, I could get a game at 6k on average every 30 seconds consistently, every single day. Recently I've dropped to about 1000 Behaviour score, and it takes me at least 5 minutes to find a game at peak EU hours, taking up to 15 minutes at the worst. Off-peak hours it's basically impossible to find a game with low Behaviour score. Alright, so having a low Behaviour score increases your queue time, which yeah, is quite bad. But this isn't even really the worst part of it. A much more damaging part of low Behaviour score is how it actually affects the games once you find them. The effect of low Behaviour score on your quality of games. A much more significant way low Behaviour score can affect your Dota experience is by significantly reducing the quality of games you play. As I've said earlier in the video, when your account has a low Behaviour score, the matchmaker is far more likely to match you with players who have a similar Behaviour score to you. Ask yourself, what sort of players have low Behaviour score? Players who have been reported a lot, that's who. I.e. players who are far more likely to ruin games over trivial things, players who are far more likely to flame over nothing and in extremely malignant personal attacks that have nothing to do with the game, players who may be playing on alt accounts or bot accounts that they might not care about, playing a fun game of Dota on, i.e. smurfs, boosters and account buyers. Allow me to illustrate this with my own experience of it. When I was at about 8,000 Behaviour score for a couple of months at the beginning of 2019, I genuinely forgot what it was like to play with ruiners and obvious boosters and smurfs. There was still a lot of flaming and rage and personal attacks and death threats, but for a couple of months, literally not a single player in several months worth of Dota ruined the game by deleting items or feeding down mid. Then, in the space of a couple of weeks, I dropped from 8,000 Behaviour score to about 4,000, and then finally resting on 1,000. Suddenly, every single game had at least one guy who would destroy his items or feed down middle, or do some other self-sabotaging act. Every single game had at least one obvious smurf or booster. The level of flame was significantly elevated, and people were far less willing to fill roles and far more likely to ruin over lane disputes. Games became much more uneven, coming down to which team tilted first. The people in my games just seemed more wary, more on edge. I found that I became a lot more resentful of other players as well in this environment, and became far more likely to flame and rage, which led to a more negative outlook on Dota and life in general. I was entering games with the expectation that I was going to get flamed, that people were going to get pissy and angry, and so the self-fulfilling prophecy began to turn its circular wheel round and round, and I began entering games on a short fuse, expecting to ruin and expecting to flame, which only fueled my descent into lower Behaviour scores and crappier games. As you fall further and further, you also begin to question your own self-worth, and begin to hate yourself and Dota, and contemplate ending it all. In short, low Behaviour score will massively diminish the quality of your games in the form of playing far more often with ruiners and smurfs, while also grating on your sanity. Which, yeah, is really quite bad, but this is even the worst part of it. The worst part of it is low behavior score's effect on your ability to get better at the game. Low behavior score kills your ability to learn from Dota games. I have never experienced a greater amount of skill stagnation than when I was playing at low behavior. This is partly because you play less games because of the increased queue times, but it's mainly a direct consequence of the diminished quality of games. When every game ends on somebody tilting and breaking items or walking down mid, your ability to learn from games goes down significantly. Often I find that games at low behavior score aren't really even close. It just comes down to who had the smurf whose account's MMR was most unrepresentative of their actual MMR, or who tilted over something arbitrary first. At high behavior score, games are much more likely to play out to their epic finale. You're much more likely to get close and interesting games where a single mistake might cost you the game, and you can learn from that mistake. In low behavior score, games will often end far before they've actually ended, because one guy lost his composure and broke his items, or a smurf went 10-0 in lane and is now completely snowballing and destroying the game. It's extremely difficult to learn anything from these games other than to train instincts and map positioning. These games are simply too consistently one-sided for anything meaningful to be learned from them. The toxicity of these games also often blinds your judgment and often has you blaming your team, even further clouding your ability to learn and get better. Just being a participant in these games is extremely damaging to your psyche in itself. The toxicity chips away at your sense of self-worth, your self-confidence, and sabotages your confidence in your own decisions, making you play worse as a player. Weeks of this can build up and make you even more toxic and resentful, and this isn't even accounting for the fact that low behavior score games are going to be played with a naturally higher variance because the players in these games are more likely to ruin over stuff the elo system can't predict, or with smurfs that mess up the whole concept of MMR. When the games aren't really even close, what can you learn from them? So, in summary, low behavior score increases queue time, massively lowers your quality of games, and worst of all, it impedes your ability to get better at the game. This is all really quite bad. The question now is, how does one improve his behavior score? First, let's begin with exactly how one gains or loses behavior score. Behavior score quantified. Let me preface this section by saying all of the experiments and data I gathered for this section are about 6 months old, because I had the idea for this video about 9 months ago. Valve doesn't release any of the hard numbers for how behavior score works to stop people from gaming the system, so I had to guess from my own games how reports, commends, and games affect your behavior score. In essence, here are the numbers. A single commend is exactly plus 50 behavior score. A single completed game of either turbo, mid-practice, or normal/ranked queue where you don't get reported is exactly plus 50 as well. Reports are where it gets weird. A single report can be anywhere between minus 250 to minus 750 behavior score. It seems to vary quite a bit on what your behavior score is already. Abandons massively decrease behavior score even if you don't get low priority from them. I estimated abandons to be at least minus 1000 behavior score, maybe even as bad as minus 1500. Low priority seems to be about the same as abandoning, resulting in a drop between minus 1000 and minus 1500. A quick disclaimer, these numbers, especially the numbers regarding abandons, reports, and low priority, are estimates that may be very inaccurate. The truth is that I simply didn't gather enough data to accurately deduce what the effect of these events were on your behavior score, so take them with a grain of salt. Anyway, from this you can see that even a single report can negate a large amount of positive conduct in the form of unreported completed games and lots of commends. Abandons are pretty disastrous too and should be avoided at all costs. This isn't even really factoring into the equation the fact that Valve seems to have implemented some sort of machine learning algorithm to be able to detect when people ruin games by deleting items, and in particular, AFKing with Shadow Amulet. Whenever I did these acts, I would seem to get low priority instantly, regardless of how many reports I was on, or what behavior score I was at. So, knowing all of this, how do we gain behavior score? A quick aside, how to track reports. Before I move on to the final section, I just want to do a quick PSA on how to track incoming reports via the new Steam GDPR features if you aren't already aware of it. I posted a link in the description that you can click on to go to your own personalized reports page. All your recent reports can be seen here. This section shows the link to the game ID that you can find via DotaBuff or Open Dota. This is the time, and this section shows what you were reported for. Anyway, PSA over. How do we gain behavior score and try and escape low behavior score hell? How to improve your behavior score. The easiest way to gain behavior score is to pay a Russian smurf to grind turbo and mid-only games for you. Just kidding. The obvious answer to the question, how does one improve his behavior score, is to just stop being toxic, but of course, speaking from personal experience, this is easier said than done. Rather, I'm going to give you a couple things to work on and rules to set for yourself that have worked for me in limiting my toxicity and the reports I receive. The first big thing you can do is learn to mute people who are negative in any way in chat. Never, ever respond to flame or flame somebody else unprovoked. This is an almost guaranteed way to get reported at least once, and even one report can undo lots and lots of commands in unreported games. If you say nothing in a game, or better yet nothing at all, the players on your team won't remember or care to report you at the end of the game if you did your job. Even if you played really badly, your chances of getting reported massively decrease if you say nothing in a game. In particular, unbind your mic key if you're somebody who is prone to being toxic over microphone. Because using microphone and being toxic, or really saying anything at all through microphone in a bad game, can get you reported, as people remember your voice and remember to report you at the end of the game. Of course, it should go without saying that you should never ruin games. Not only will this get you mass reported, but Valve seem to have implemented some sort of way to detect this behavior and mark your account for low priority. Abandoning is extremely detrimental to behavior score as well, as we saw in the last section. Ask yourself, is saving 20 minutes off a bad game worth the several hours or even days worth of games you have to play to work off the huge behavior score hit? Remember, abandoning is worth something like 5 reports at once and has the potential to give you low priority, which is a huge blow to your behavior score as well. The second way you can avoid getting reported is to force yourself to fill roles instead of marking core at the start of every game. Unfortunately, it's current year, and Valve still haven't made ranked roles the default way to search Dota, despite role disputes, especially over core roles, being by far the most common reason for ruined games in ranked matchmaking. Stealing somebody's role or even first picking a core role will cause another player on your team to resent you for the rest of the game, and they are far more likely to report you at the end of the game. Once you get to high behavior score, people are far more likely to fill for you as well if you want to core, but at low behavior, contesting core roles is a surefire way to piss somebody off and get you reported. A final way to improve your behavior score is to take regular breaks from ranked matchmaking, perhaps even grinding normal or turbo games to get easy commands in unreported games. It helps to take regular breaks from Dota in any form, as the stress and toxicity will build up over hours and even days of Dota and make you a more resentful and toxic player, making your future games even more toxic as you drop in behavior score. Anyway, thank you for watching this shortish video on behavior score. If you want more guides and Dota content like this, please like and subscribe and perhaps drop a comment below about what you enjoyed or disliked about the video. I was recently unsuspended from Twitch and will begin linking my Twitch account in the description of all my videos. If you want to see me live and have conversations with me through Twitch chat, follow my Twitch channel where I play ranked Dota games and try not to let the toxicity consume me. Anyway, thank you for staying to the end of the video. Peace, Ikab out.